Hello, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Welcome back to another video of a dumb chimp rambling about the spiritual life. In this video, I'm going to talk about a very important virtue / practice that I have been trying to strengthen in my own life, and that is watchfulness. Watchfulness. The reason I want to talk about this is because I personally have struggled quite badly with overthinking, ruminating, imagining a million different scenarios of the future that haven't happened and then get worried and anxious about them, as well as not so much, but dwelling on the past and wondering what I could have done better, how I could have avoided certain things, when ultimately what's done is done and anything imagined in the future does not exist. No point worried about it. Easy said than done. So I'm going to be taking an approach to this, combining both the spiritual, the psychological, with a little sprinkle of emotional as well, because I think that there is merit in talking about everything all at once here. It does all tie in rather profoundly, and it's through this holistic approach that I have found most success, and hopefully I'll be able to convey that in a way where you guys can also have the same success. Where to begin? So I have recently been reading the Theological. For those who don't know what this book is, it is essentially a compilation of spiritual texts written by church fathers dating from the 3rd, 4th century to the 7th century. As you can see, I'm only halfway through it, yet my brain, and more importantly my heart, are swelling with wisdom, and it is slowly but surely having a tremendous impact on my spiritual life. Although it is quite difficult to read. I get very tired when I'm reading this book. I don't know if anyone else has shared that experience, but it's heavy. It's a heavy read. Anyway, but one of the main topics in this book is around watchfulness and the Jesus prayer. Also forgetfulness as well. But I'll talk about that in a little moment. Ultimately, what watchfulness is, believe it or not, to watch over what you allow into your heart. So everything begins in the mind, or is described in this book, in the intelligence, or the intellect. The intellect being your rational faculty, your intelligence being your conscious free will to permit or to reject certain ideas or thoughts. And the overall goal depicted in this book is purity of heart. I'm not going to go too much into what that means. That's an entire video in of itself. But purity of heart, and it's something that I've been fascinated with ever since I learned about it in the Orthodox psychotherapy book, which I've mentioned before. But this idea of purity of heart, where one can reach a state where the world no longer affects them and you are fully open to Christ and His love and His light, and you can see the world as He would see it, and He works through you most efficiently because you're more open to it. I said I wasn't going to talk about it. Stop. But to achieve purity of heart, one has to perfect watchfulness. There are two sides to this. The first side is the rejection of negative thoughts. These are very obvious. Any thought which brings about an impassioned state or a negative state, something that makes you anxious, something that makes you worried, they are naturally something we want to reject. And we know this. We all know this. I don't have to tell you, but it's easier said than done. There's a reason why people fall into passion. If we could all perfect watchfulness of heart, click your fingers, we'd all be theosis level saints before we die. So there's obviously a reason why we can't do that. But that's the first side. The second is the rejection of positive thoughts. I'm going to expand on this because that sounds a bit pessimistic. But ultimately, to achieve watchfulness, one has to reject every image. You do not want any image being imprinted on your heart, because that reduces the amount of space that God can inhabit within you. Obviously, he is all powerful, so he could just, blast it out the way and just squeeze on in, but that would be an impingement of our free will and our voluntary acquiescence to the spiritual journey. And as I said earlier, it begins in the imagination, an image, a fantasy. These could even be words. It doesn't have to be a picture. Like an image is not meant to be a picture. It's anything in the mind that takes you out of the present moment, that constructs a narrative that is unnecessary in that moment. We really have to discern here between thinking about a math equation we're trying to solve and imagining a past argument we had, or a future we want or we worry about happening. There's obviously some value in using your brain at times. I would say you just got to completely lobotomize yourself in order to achieve theosis. Use your discernment. So the more negative side is a lot easier, because we know what makes us feel a certain way. If you have lustful thoughts, that is going to inflame that passion. We all know to avoid those at all costs. Also, once again, easier said than done. But with the more positive thoughts, this can be tricky. And this is one of the crafty elements of the evil one, and how he will persuade you to allow these images to form in your mind and thus in your heart. The example that comes to mind, I don't script these videos, I come up with things on the fly. The example that comes to mind is marriage, okay? A lot of young men and women, I'm not going to discriminate, I'm just talking from a man's perspective right now, want to get married. And that's fine. Your desire to get married is beautiful, nothing wrong with that. The problem comes when you start constructing an idealized version of that and you start playing it out in fantasy. You sat there and you're thinking about your spouse, your future kids, how you're going to be spending your time, and it's beautiful, right? And I talk from first-hand experience, by the way. This is something that I've fallen into quite a lot. It's something that's beautiful that you can't. You don't feel anything negative about it. Like, how can that be negative when it's pure? I'm not saying you're not imagining anything sexual or anything like that. It's just purity, pure. Just a nice marriage. You're holding hands, walking through the park. Your little kids there, they're playing, laughing, joking, birds chirping, like all these things. It's beautiful. It's pure. The problem is that it's not real. It's not real. As much as you want it to be real, it's not. And in that moment, you have ceased to exist in the present moment in order to exist in an egotistically projected false reality to which you are then inhabiting, and have closed yourself off from God's presence. That's the danger. The other danger is that these pure thoughts can then turn into negative, they can become impassioned thoughts. What starts off as innocent will usually be a Trojan horse. It starts off with marriage, and then maybe it starts drifting into having children, and then it's like, whoa, we all know where that goes. Just just being honest, like we all know. So we have to be careful, because we can delude ourselves and rationalize these imaginary lives by saying, but I'm not sinning in these thoughts. I'm not imagining sin. I'm not imagining passion. I'm just imagining something beautiful and pure. It's like, yeah, but that's not the sin. The sin is, as I said, egoic, false reality. You're choosing to live in that as opposed to living in the present moment and experiencing the world and life that God has blessed you here and now. Right? Because you've got to remember, anything that you think of and imagine all comes from you. That's not God. That's you. It's your projection. It's your life built on the experience you've had based around your desires. Right? It's purely prideful, which is a hard pill to swallow. But it is. You're choosing a life of your construction, a false reality, as opposed to the life you have. Even if it's just for a 5-minute daydream. It's the truth. Oh, whoa, I don't want to claim that's the truth. I'm not the arbiter of truth. Scratch that. You get my point. So this is where the saints in this book, notably Saint Hezekios the priest and Saint Mark the ascetic, they talk about it in great depth. Beware of the evil one planting seeds, whether seemingly positive or outright negative. So watchfulness, how do you do it? I don't know. That's I'm joking. The evil one will always plant intrusive thoughts in your mind. As far as the saints are concerned, as far as the Lord is concerned, we cannot stop it. Even Christ himself was subjected to temptation while he was in the desert. And this is not to say that he was actually tempted, as in he at any moment thought about giving in to what the devil was offering, but he was subjected to the choice. He was, turn this into bread, jump from this mountain. The evil one was tempting him. And I guess it was the manly nature of Christ that was being tempted in that moment. I don't get into theology on that in case I get it wrong. But God himself was in that moment subjected to choices of temptation. And if he can be subjected to it, we're screwed. We're screwed. But I guess I say that to people, I guess myself included, wonder, is there ever any freedom from the intrusive thoughts? What can we do about them? And the answer is no, we can never stop them. We can never stop them. The evil one knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows what makes us tick. He knows how to abuse our psychology and our emotions. And he's not going anywhere. Anytime soon, at least. Maybe. Who knows? So we have to prepare for this. We have to guard ourselves, fortify ourselves spiritually, intellectually, but also practice watchfulness. When these thoughts enter your mind, you need to vanquish them as fast as possible. Get them out. Don't not entertain them with anything. Anything. Just get rid. Completely. Do not even acknowledge it for as much as you are able to. Imagine it like a little mosquito, like slap. Slap. You don't want it. Get out of my head. Right? Obviously, in the book, it's explained a lot more eloquently and spiritually. But you really gotta stop engaging with the thoughts, whether they're negative or positive, right? That thought comes into your mind like, oh, one day you might get married. It's like, oh yeah, who's it going to be to? It's like, no, don't ask the question. Don't engage with it. Ignore it. Let it disappear into the nether. A very powerful way of doing this is the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. The evil one cannot stand the Lord's name. He cannot stand the sign of the cross. And this is why this book is replete with instruction on how to achieve watchfulness by means of the practice of repetition of the Jesus prayer, as well as other spiritual practices like asceticism, etc. But I'm predominantly want to focus on the Jesus prayer as well as the emotional element of this and the psychological element of this, because those are extremely important. So it's easy enough for me to say, just pray away the thoughts. It's easy as that. You just say a few words, oh, gone, you feel better, happy days. For some, this is true. For certain thoughts, it may be true. The problem arises, well, the deeper problem arises when you have an emotional attachment to what the intrusive thought is. The evil one, as I said, knows you inside and out. He knows what triggers you. He knows what makes you tick. He knows what will get a response from you. If you are someone that struggles with watching adult content, he's not going to tempt you with gambling. He might, if the situation arises, but, same way an alcoholic isn't going to be tempted with buying loads of clothes. I'm just trying to think of very contrasting things here. But I hope that illustrates the point. He will tailor the temptation towards what he knows you have a weakness in. And you're allowed to have these weaknesses, by the way. I don't want this to sound as though I'm condemning or ridiculing anyone that suffers with this. As someone that is very much in the trenches of spiritual warfare with you, I have experienced this firsthand for years. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I laugh and I joke, but this is serious because it affects a lot of people and it leads a lot of people into darkness that they're not always equipped to get themselves out of. And this is why I really stress the importance of doing emotional, psychological work, because if the intrusive thought arises and you have no emotional attachment to it, then it's so much easier to get rid of, right? The evil one knows what he's been able to tempt me with in the past and I've succumbed to multiple times. But if he uses it now, which he does, I am so much more able to get rid, because my soul isn't being drawn towards that which he has implanted in my head, right? Falling into temptation is usually a means of filling a void or wanting to escape a reality of your life. And there's many different reasons. But if you still have a strong attachment to a particular behavior for a particular reason, if the intrusive thought is planted in your head that will either trigger the reason why or will tempt you with the behavior, then emotionally it can be overpowering. and make it a lot harder to make that right decision in the end. And it's all well and good saying, just discipline yourself, just, make the right decision. It's like, if it was that easy, sin wouldn't happen. Trust me, this is me I'm not shunning discipline, right? You can build discipline and you can override your emotional impulses and say, I'm not doing this, right? In my experience, it's a lot easier to not have to do that. To not have to swim against the current and force yourself against the darkness that is ultimately overpowering and far stronger than you, right? But discipline is necessary as well. I want to make that very clear. It can help you push over that obstacle in real time where you might not emotionally be equipped to do so. But let's say, for example, someone has become an alcoholic and it's rooted in shame. They've maybe done something in the past that they haven't forgiven themselves for, and they are constantly reminded of it every single day until they have a drink. And in that moment, they can just forget about everything, right? It will begin in the morning. They wake up, first thought on their mind, hey, remember when you did that? And how much of a horrible person you are? And this and that and that and that and that. That emotional response to those intrusive thoughts, because they still feel that way, will be 100 times stronger. And then they'll start feeding into it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm horrible. I'm a disgusting person. I'm this, I'm that. I should never have done that. Regret, remorse, guilt, shame. Boop, 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 boop. Vice. Numb the pain. Whatever that vice is, doesn't have to be alcohol, it could be anything. But by addressing the reason why that particular vice or temptation is so powerful for you, when those thoughts come to mind, you'll better be able to, A, disagree with them. If you've forgiven yourself, you no longer hold shame or guilt, and a thought pops in, says, you're a horrible person. Yeah, you can rationally say, I mean, I know, and this happened because of X and Y, blah, blah, blah. But if at an emotional core level, you still agree with that, you're going to dive straight into that thought. You are going to welcome it with open arms, feed into it, make it more powerful, and then it becomes too overwhelming. And the vice will be enacted in order to then suppress it and bring it back down. But it's always going to be there. Obviously, I'm not going to go into how to do that in this video. It's not the appropriate context. Feel free to message me if you're interested in the work that I do with people in terms of addressing these emotions. But I wanted to make this video to demonstrate that, okay, yes, there is a spiritual practice here of avoiding intrusive thoughts, cleansing them before they are allowed to grow and not engaging with them, etc., etc. But it is made a lot easier when you don't have those strong attachments to them. So much easier. And they don't use the exact language in this book, and I should have been more prepared and gotten quotes ready for this, but I just did this on the fly. But they allude to ideas of, once you're better able to call upon the Lord's name when in these moments of intrusion, and you get better control, you're more open, you're less ruminative on certain things, you then start being shown why, right? And it says in this book, you start seeing the causes, and you can start handling the causes. They talk about the cause, and it's like, what else could that be other than the psychological, emotional reasons we have for wanting to behave a certain way? I will die on this hill. In this moment of my life, there's nothing I'm more passionate about than bridging the gap which we have destroyed many a year ago between the spiritual and the psychological. It's real. It is real and it's powerful. And I've experienced it myself. I've worked with people that have experienced it. It's not woo-woo. It's so profound. And I just want to say as well, I'm not talking as an expert in any of these spiritual practices, by the way. I by no means perfected watchfulness. But it's like, even after a short period, I've noticed a huge difference. And it's all kind of culminated together where I've been sent videos on the psychological implications of rumination. I've been sent spiritual videos on handling thoughts, etc. And I'm reading this book and like I'm being exposed to a lot of the same ideas just coming from different angles, and bringing it together and distributing it for you guys is my ultimate goal here. I'm not a spiritual guide, but when it comes to emotions, I like to think I'm fairly experienced. I forgot to talk about forgetfulness. That's kind of ironic. Essentially, forgetfulness is forgetting to be watchful. So it's kind of one of those passions where, you know, we ultimately, the guilt, we should be keeping the Lord's name on our minds and our breath as we go throughout the day. When our minds are not needed, for example, solving a math equation, although some saints argue that even when conducting intellectual acts, you can still keep the Jesus prayer on your mind. I tried it while reading before, it's really hard. But anyway, but it's very difficult to obviously keep that constant stream going, avoiding thoughts, keeping the Lord's name on your mind. And the more often you are able to kind of snap back into it and take yourself out of those imagination lands and fantasies and, you know, intrusive thoughts, etc., and remember to be present and remember to call upon the Lord's name, it strengthens you. You be even like at a neurological level, your brain will just become more habitually inclined to call upon the Lord's name, and that doesn't reduce the profundity of it. The Jesus prayer is self-actuating. By that I mean just saying Jesus' name invokes a spiritual power far out of our control. Even if you are 1% attention, just like, Lord Jesus Christ, it doesn't matter. Obviously, be as attentive as possible, but even if you are able to just use that tiny last bit of energy that you've got to mutter the Lord's name, it will have an effect. It will have an effect. Just being attentive, being watchful, protecting your heart at all costs. Your heart is everything. Your heart is where Christ resides and wants to reside as fully as possible. The way they talk about it in this book, man, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's inspiring. To reach a point where one's heart becomes so pure that the Lord's will is just presented to you in real time. Imagine that. Imagine the life you could live if that was the case. All the imaginations you have, all the beautiful fantasies, all the images you have. I want this life. I want this for my kids. I want to send them to here and do this with my wife and go here, travel here. It's like, great. But nothing you think of is greater than what God wills for you. Okay, yeah, there may be some of that which God will for you in some regard, but everything you create in your mind is an egoic projection. It's all internal. It's not from God. There's no point thinking about the future. You can set goals. Have ambition. Of course, I'm not discounting that at all. But you don't want to live in that fantasy. You want to be in the present. Take steps right now to work towards those goals. How can you be a child of God now? How can you purify your heart now? How can you work towards your vocation now? I'm talking to myself, by the way. One thing I want to close on is something that it's an image. Oh man, I just told you not to think of images. Now I'm giving you an image. So in the paradisial garden, once Adam and Eve have been rejected, God appoints a cherubim with a flaming sword to guard the entrance. The kingdom of heaven is within us. Paradise is within us. One could say the Garden of Eden is within us. You need to instill your own cherubim and a flaming sword so that anything that comes into your mind is destroyed immediately. Spinning in all directions. Aikido. I jest, but it's real. And that image has been very powerful for me for many reasons. It's really helped me avoid impassioned thoughts. I imagine something coming in and I'm like, get out, destroyed. Don't want that. And it really works. And then you call upon the Lord's name, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And it's like, whoo, expelling the darkness and bringing in the light. It can get exhausting. I say that not to complain. It's just an observation. Especially when you know there are thoughts there waiting. You can feel it. They're like in the bushes, in the shadows. Like, oh, when is he gonna drop his guard? Oh. And then when you do, pounce. I know that if I stopped talking and let my guard down, I know exactly what thoughts would come up. I know what they are. But I'm not going to entertain them. And I'm going to do the emotional work that's fueling the negative attachments I have to them. Because I do. If I let them in, they're going to strike a part of me that I have not yet dealt with. But I know I'm going to. All glory to God for teaching me how. And the reason I share that image of the cherubim is because that's something I don't want to say I came up with this myself, because clearly not. But like so the works of like Jonathan Pageau, it was just a really powerful image, and it's like we are a microcosm of that greater cosmic reality of the paradisial garden, the cherubim and God appointing, and like yeah. So I'm going to end on a quote from Saint Hezekiah, the priest, in his chapter on watchfulness and holiness. This is point teaching 176. Let us hold fast, therefore, to prayer and humility, for together with watchfulness they act like a burning sword against the demons. If we do this, we shall daily and hourly be able to celebrate a secret festival of joy within our hearts. It's beautiful. I can only hope to achieve this one day, if the Lord wills it. And I hope this has been helpful for you in your spiritual journey, and that you can take something away from this. I will remind you, I am not a spiritual father, I'm not a spiritual guide, I'm not even a reader. I am an altar boy that holds candles on a Sunday. So don't take this as succinct spiritual advice. Please consult your spiritual father. I am just a chimp trying to compile a bunch of stuff together and have it make sense. Because these guys in books like these, they talk very eloquently and profoundly, and it can be quite confusing sometimes. So I'm trying to, I don't say dumb it down, but just make it a bit more accessible. So yeah, rambling now. Hope this helps. It's great to be back in front of the camera. More stuff coming soon. God bless. Yeah!